Is it live? Sorry. Um, hello. Another video for the Indian Dream podcast. And this is going to be slightly different. We're not going to be covering trends. We're going to be talking about one of the most important questions that we've heard from our audience is how do you manage to get all of these entrepreneurs and founders on your podcast? So we're going to talk about that. Sahil, do
We've
you want to kick us
gotten,
off?
yeah, we've gotten so many. Whenever I talk to somebody about the podcast, because whenever somebody joins our WhatsApp group, we always message them like, "Hey, what's up?" and all that. And people are always like, "How do you get all these people?" Because obviously, all of them can't be from your network. And cold emailing is a not just cold emailing, but cold networking is a trick that we've learned over the last 9 months, such that we've been able to do 75 episodes with so many guests from a variety of industries from all over the world and from all over India. So, how do we do cold emailing? I think that's a really good topic. So, step number one, right, is identifying the person. And I think people don't put enough time into this. We put a lot of time into identifying the right person who's an exact fit for what we're looking at. So, for example, we cover a lot of different trends. And if, let's say, for example, our first trend was hemp, we looked at the entire hemp industry. We looked at who are the market leaders in hemp, like all the companies that are market leaders in hemp, and then we identified the key people in all those companies, and then we specifically targeted only those couple of people. What I see a lot of people doing is that they do mass emails to a bunch of people. It doesn't feel personalized, and therefore people tend to ignore it.
Yeah.
And that actually brings me to the second point: research. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, we live in the world where a lot of information about a person is actually on the internet. So that's where we start. We look at that Twitter, LinkedIn, all kinds of social profiles. I do a normal Google search, weird things pop up sometimes, but it gives you a good perspective of who are you reaching out to and helps you in personalization. And just one more point about personalization. I've seen this personally. I used to work at a company that was around personalizing recruiting emails. So when you're reaching out to candidates, we saw 2x the number of response rate if the email was personalized, right? If somebody did the research and actually mentioned a few things in the email. So we make it a point to actually personalize, hyper personalize it just for them. So basically, I mean, we have like a template which is basically a paragraph about giving an intro to the Indian dream. Everything else basically changes for every single guest that we reach out to. It's just hyper personalized.
Yeah, I just to give an example, right? I recently reached out to a YouTuber called Curious Harish. I watched several of his videos. I believe I went to his LinkedIn as well. I did a lot of research, and before I even typed the first message in that email that I sent him, and that's what got him on the podcast. And we released that episode with Curious Harish today itself. And this guy has 100,000 YouTube followers. He has like 50,000 LinkedIn followers. He has a pretty big social profile. I'm sure a lot of people are emailing all the time. If I didn't personalize, it would have just gone into his trash.
Yeah.
Okay. What's step number three? So we personalize it. And then when we're doing our research, part of that research is checking our network.
Yeah.
I think if you're able to find this person somehow through your own network, it solves 90% of the issues.
Yeah.
So for example, Siddharth has a really strong network through his MBA program in India, ISB, the Indian School of Business. It's a very strong network. And we've been able to find a lot of guests through that. And that introduction, it's no longer a cold introduction, and
Yeah.
that increases the chance of conversion like 5x.
Yeah.
Usually, when we're doing a cold email, we'll have maybe a 10-20% success rate. But as soon as it's a warm introduction, it becomes like 80-90%, because that person is vouching for you, that
Yeah.
you are a legitimate entity, and that the person you're reaching out to should talk to you.
Just to add there, the person that you're reaching out to within your network to do the intro, be cognizant of the fact that they'll need some information to actually reach out to that person, right? So give them a short blurb on why you want that person, and make it easy for them to reach out. Just don't be like, can you connect me to this person, right? Because I see that happening a lot of times when somebody reaches out, can you connect me? And I'm like, give me some context. What do I
Yeah.
send to them? All of those things. These are basics, but you just have to get them right.
That happens to us a lot, because now that we're connected to so many people, people reach out to us a lot. and I'm always asking for context. If I don't have context, what do I talk to that person about?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the next point is extremely important in this, right? It's sort of connected, which is question yourself about what's in it for them, right?
Yeah.
Like, don't think about it from your perspective. I want to get you on my podcast because it's going to be great for my podcast. Sure, I'm sure that's true, which is why you're getting them. But what's in it for them,
Yeah.
right? Like, are they getting some sort of social reach? Are they able to amplify their message? Are they, do what's in it for them? Like, really brainstorm and figure that out. So critical. Again, some people just don't worry about that. We get requests saying, can you connect me to them? I want to talk to them. I want to pick their brains. I'm like, but why will they talk to you? Like, give me something, right?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. And this point and the next point, it there's a book called "Building a Story Brand" by Donald Miller. Siddharth thinks that book is a bit too long, but this one book changed my perspective on how to talk to people about my own brand. Right? Earlier, what I used to do was I used to always be like, "Hey, man, check out my company because it's so cool. My company does this. My company is so cool. You love it just as much as I love it." I realized though that instead of doing it that way, the way to sell is
Sell yourself.
research. Yeah, no, research
Yeah.
research that person thoroughly, find out what that person's needs are. Once you know what that person's needs are, you will be able to say that, like, hey, um, let's say his name is Siddharth. Hey, Siddharth, I know that you really like unhealthy food. I have this really, really unhealthy food for you. Why don't you eat it? And then maybe if for me, hey, Sahil, I know you really likes healthy food. I have this line of healthy food for you. Why don't you eat it?
We
Um,
never discussed that you're going to tell the rest of the world that I like unhealthy food. This was not part of the script, but I'll
yeah.
go with it.
But yeah, so that's step number four is like, yeah, question yourself what's in it for them. And that ties directly back into step number five is when you're writing that email, when you're writing that LinkedIn message, when you're trying to connect to that person, make sure that your message is focused on them and not on you. Because if you are the hero of that message, that like, hey, Siddharth, I want to connect with you because I want to get you on my podcast because it'd be great to have you on my podcast because you are so great. That guy will just be like, I get 1,000 of these messages, I don't care.
Yeah.
But instead, if I say, hey, Siddharth, I want, I want to give you the opportunity to amplify your brand by being on my podcast, which is a Spotify #1 podcast. It will be great for you. You will
Yeah.
be in front of a lot more people. I'll give an example of how I changed this for somebody else. So I usually do send these emails by saying I'll amplify your brand. But for people who already have a big network, my podcast is not going to amplify that brand too much, right? I recently reached out to somebody who has a very big following. Curious Harish actually was one of them. So instead of focusing on amplifying your brand, I focused on something that is different than usual. I focused on having a fun time because these guys are probably called on a lot of interviews and a lot of interviews are really boring. So I was just like, hey, man, do you want to come on my Business Munchies podcast? Because Business Munchies is all about having fun and just exploring random ideas. That's the email that I sent to Curious Harish. I sent that same email to some other large influencers, and they respond to that, right?
Yeah.
Because a normal interview is just boring.
Yeah.
And then once you send that email, and once they respond to you, I think then you go into step number six, Siddharth.
Before we do that, I think one of the things that people miss out on is they send the email, and when they don't hear back, they just give
Yeah,
up, right? I've gotten so many responses by just a gentle follow up, right? And these follow ups could be as simple as, hey, if this doesn't work for you, if it doesn't make sense for you, just respond and I'll stop following up, right? So it gives them some incentive to say that, hey, maybe not right now, right?
yeah,
And that's completely fine, right? It basically, what you've been able to do is get a response from them, so there's some level of connect that's already happened. Once you sort of satisfy that criteria, maybe once you're slightly bigger, you can reach out on the same email thread saying that, hey, this is the progress we've made, would you like to come on the show now? There have
yeah,
been so many guests that we've been able to convert basis that because when we started out, we were, I mean, we had no following, right? But we were very ambitious on like the kind of people that we wanted to get on. And we sent these cold emails after researching and stuff like that. And initially, when we didn't know any better, we were slightly dejected that we didn't hear responses. But the follow up actually changed the game for us. We've gotten so many people just basis that sort of, I call it, you know, persistence, but polite persistence, right? You're not like aggressively like, why aren't you replying to me? Give them an option. If this doesn't work for you, just let me know. I think polite persistence goes a long way in when it comes to following up.
And I
And then,
No,
yeah,
no, and just to add to that, right? I forgot about follow-ups. And some people feel very afraid that, like, hey, I don't want to follow up because it seems rude. But follow-ups are absolutely necessary because cold emails have maybe a 5-10% success rate, and you can double that success rate or triple that success rate just with a simple follow-up.
yeah.
Anyways, step number 6, Siddharth.
Step number 6 is when you do get a meeting with them, when you do get a chance to talk to them, don't make it transactional. Don't make it, hey, I called you because I wanted to get you on the podcast and when can we do it? Don't make it that. Try and build a relationship. Joke around, sort of, read the room and see how you can build that bond with that person. We used to be really bad at this. I can't tell you how bad we were at this, right? We used to just be getting directly to the point, and we used to be like, hey, do you want to come on the podcast? And an intern who joined us actually helped us understand that it seems very transactional. Why don't you like invest some time to build relationship first? And that also changed the game completely. The people that we've gotten on now are actually, I won't say good friends, but we have some sort of a rapport with them, right? Where,
Bonding, yeah.
yeah, some sort of bonding where we, when we text them, they'll happily respond and stuff like that. And that comes from the fact that when you jump on that call, don't make it transactional. Try and build a relationship and then get to the point.
Yeah. In fact, Siddharth was given the job of being a bit more serious, and I was given the job of being making a complete fool of myself. And on the calls that we have with them, I try to joke around as much as possible. Sometimes even to the detriment of the conversation, because sometimes you don't know what makes that person laugh, and if you can make that person laugh, you can get that person comfortable. They're a lot more okay with opening up, and they're a lot more okay with like shit going wrong, because a lot of times there might be technical issues,
Yeah.
there might be other issues, and this is something that we've gotten a lot better at.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, and this is not just for when you're talking for the first time. Even when we get them on the podcast, we make them comfortable. We joke around a little bit because then the conversations are much more fruitful, right? They're open to talking about things that they wouldn't if it was just a formal interview, right? And some of the podcasts, some of the feedback that we have gotten is actually about that you've been able to have this conversation where people opened up, where the normal interviews people wouldn't have spoken about these things.
yeah.
So yeah.
Cool, awesome. Thanks for listening to day 2 of our YouTube live streams. We are
Yeah.
trying to do this for 30 days.